It's showtime.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
Made in America, heard round the world. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with my co-host, Mark Young. Is Paris burning? Is Paris burning? This is the question that Hitler asked his generals when the Allies were approaching in the middle 40s during the Second World War. Hitler wanted Paris destroyed and on fire. If they had to leave there, they were going to leave nothing but destruction behind them. And the generals kept saying, yes, mein Führer, it's being done, but they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't take a torch to Paris. Somebody did. We don't know who. I guess we'll talk about that today. I don't want to make some giant conspiracy out of this because, you know, the first thing comes to mind is terrorism. That's immediately where your mind goes, that it's not an accident because, and then you have this, I've been to Notre Dame many times. I have pictures that I've taken in Notre Dame of my family and me, and I'm sure Mark has been there as well. I don't know. We never talked about it, but I'm sure you have been. But I've been there over the years several times. It is iconic. It is an amazing piece of architecture. It's an amazing historical place. And that's, interestingly enough, I know that there are Catholics throughout the world who are treating this as a spiritual, iconic place. But quite frankly, most people are looking at it as a kind of an architectural, historical place because France is so secular these days. There is no spirit. I think it's just gone. But then this happens, and everybody starts praying and singing in the streets. I mean, maybe in the midst of a bad thing, this is a good thing to bring people back around to their spiritual side instead of their secular side. I don't know. I'm sure that some people would take that in a very nasty way, but I don't mean it that way. But anyway, we don't want to bore you with all of this. You've seen it ad infinitum all weekend and all day yesterday. So anyway, Mark.
Well, Chuck, here's what's got my attention. Everyone is railing on construction accident. Russ and I were talking that there was some guy named Pepe that was probably cooking fondue during the construction project. But here's the thing. In the past month,
you just correlated Pepe, which is Mexican, fondue, which is Swedish, in a French iconic tower. Wait, how did you do that?
Well, because they import
triangulation.
They import the construction workers.
Yeah, okay.
So at any rate, forget about Pepe.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. In the past month, there have been 10 Catholic churches deliberately set on fire in France.
No, that's exactly right. And you just cannot avoid the conspiracy of what's going on with all these Muslims who were running the country and they allowed them in, and how nasty they are about Christians and how they want to take over all the churches. And so you just can't avoid that. It has to be looked at. And I'm surely they will do that because there was a Pakistani that apparently broke into one of the churches and set it on fire and tried to raid, I guess, where the kings were placed. I can't remember the name of the church, but this happened like last month. So if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, but you don't know.
Well, the thing is, okay, you've had 10 churches deliberately set on fire. ISIS has taken credit for them.
Oh, did they?
Yes, this is now the most important Catholic structure in Europe. It's Easter week.
You know, there's another side to this, though, Mark. If they take credit for this, if ISIS would take credit for this, or any Muslim group or whatever it would be, I really think that it would be a giant mistake, and they're not stupid. I think they know that. This has really caught the attention of the world because whatever you want to say, it's like burning the Mona Lisa in a way. So just out of spite. So I can't imagine, and I think they would have come forward by now if they were going to take credit for it, don't you? I'm not sure they want to take credit for this.
Here's the question: is if it was caused by an act of violence or terrorism, is it going to be covered up? Because think about this right now.
Well, that's another thing with what's going on in Sweden. You wonder about that too.
You look at France right now. France averages like 70 car fires a night. They had almost 900 car fires on Bastille Day, almost 1,200 car fires on New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they set fire to cars as a national pastime.
Mm-hmm.
They've had 10 churches deliberately set on fire in the past 30 days.
And of course, we have so much going on here that people don't even realize this. This is probably news to a lot of people, which is good. You know, we want to inform you.
So when you look at all the fires over there, when you look at the fact that they have regularly scheduled riots every weekend in Paris now,
mm-hmm.
and 10 church fires, just strictly, I have no evidence how this happened. But statistically, if it was a random construction accident, that would be an outlier. Mm-hmm. It would be statistically odd for that to be the case.
You're right. And that's why when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, somebody set Notre Dame on fire. That was the first thing that came across my mind. And so immediately, I'm sure that the mainstream media thinks the same thing. So they went, okay, let's dispel this as quickly as possible, that this is not what happened. And so that's all you heard was they don't know. They think it was a fire. It was accidentally set. It happened just before everybody left, apparently at the end of the day. And so I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. I don't know. I'm not sure it's going to change my life. It certainly is a very impressive place, though, to look at when you. I go back to Pillars of the Earth and how the flying buttress was made. Those big buttresses that come off Notre Dame, and how that was what they used in order to avoid wind shear of knocking the buildings down. And architecturally, I thought that was all very interesting. And I looked at Notre Dame that way through the eyes of a kind of a, not an architect, but somebody who loves architecture. But still, it's like walking into St. Patrick's. I'm not a Catholic, but I walked into St. Patrick's with Kristen when we were doing something with Fox. I'd never been in it before. And you walk in and there's vaulted ceilings, and it's just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is a monument to God Almighty and his power, and it's what people did in the 11th century or the 12th century. And we don't do that anymore. Now we're in barns. And I realize that the physical church is not the body of Christ. We, the believers, are. But still, it's amazing to see what men would do in order to impress God.
Well, and St. Patrick's is actually in kind of an homage to Notre Dame. It was built.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, statistically, if this was an accident, that is an outlier compared to what's happening in France. My
first impression is that I'm waiting, and I hopefully will find out. I hope it is an outlier, but I don't know. I'm not sure I trust the press to tell us either.
I don't know they will, especially in France. Well, speaking of outliers, Bernie Sanders had his town hall meeting.
And what did you think of that? I watched it, the whole thing. What did you think?
I think that he didn't answer any questions.
He's a foxy old guy, isn't he? He really is just a fox. Wait a minute. Let me tell you this. That's a fair question. And of course, it was amazing to watch him jump back and forth and not say anything really, except Medicare for all.
So you're a millionaire. Why didn't you pay the higher tax rate that you could pay? I paid the taxes. Why don't you get Donald Trump's tax returns in here and let's look at that?
This is all so bull. It has nothing to do with anything. I don't really care about. I'm glad he made $1 million. I don't care if he made $5 million. His hypocrisy though is boundless, and the hypocrisy of the left is boundless. It just has no boundaries at all, and that's what irks me. But people listen to him, and it's Medicare for all. So that means that everybody who's been paying into Medicare, everybody, all of a sudden you're just going to bring all these people. It's like open borders. Just bring them across, and you can pay for them too. It's ridiculous. And on top of that, these people, these lefty progressive Democrats and progressive Republicans as well, are constantly fighting and trying to defeat the one thing that keeps them going. It's the golden goose that feeds them. And that's the private sector. They're constantly trying to compete with the private sector, and they can't do it. They never could do it. So they just constantly pummel the private sector, and they're taking advantage of it. Insurance companies are doing this, and pharmacy companies are doing that. And it just goes on and on and on, and how great the government is. And the government can't get anything right.
But Bernie did say, I became a millionaire because I wrote a best-selling book. So if you write a best-selling book, you can be a millionaire too.
Right.
Well, now, by the way.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I say, if you're Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah, just you took the words out of my mouth. I was just going there. Okay.
You can make your way to the New York Times list of bestsellers and not sell any books.
No, that's right. Just have your name on it and say, I'm Valerie Jarrett, and this is my book, and I'm number one, but not really. So that's a New York Times. The New York Times plays so many games that people don't even know about, but you know.
So the New York Times being on the list, the New York Times list of best-selling books, is now the equivalent of getting a Nobel Peace Prize.
Which is completely, well, Nobel Peace. I was going to get ready to go to the Pulitzer Prize, but they're both just made up of lefties anyway. So if you're a conservative and write a column just an opinion piece, you might get a prize of some kind. But not a journalist. They would never do that for a conservative journalist. Conservatives are being shut down left and right, and people aren't even aware of it. But unless you are one trying to accomplish something, you look at this movie called, what was it called?
Unplanned.
Unplanned.
We're going to be interviewing the producers of that movie this week.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about that is that they just completely shut them down on Twitter, on Google, on every platform that they were trying to use. They just shut it down.
Twitter claims that was unplanned.
Oh, they always claim it's unplanned, but we know better than that. Oh, yeah, right. It was unplanned. Thank you. There's a play on words. I was a little slow to the party on
the uptake there. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to remind Bernie of something, and that is, as you and I have said this before, there is the Office of the Public Debt at 203rd Street in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
this is real.
Yeah, we did a whole video on this for YouTube. I don't know how long ago, 6-7 years ago, something like that.
But that's real. There is an office in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where you can voluntarily send money in for the purpose of paying off the national debt. Why are none of these people who are millionaires, not a one of them, is sending their money in to pay off the national debt? That is just being a hypocrite.
Because they're hypocrites. And the other thing is that they hide behind this thing. If you'll notice, all the billionaires are criticizing other billionaires for, not paying enough taxes. Obama comes on. He's not a billionaire, but he's a millionaire. How he did that, I'll never know. Another book. And so...
well, books are legit. If you write a book, that's a legit millionaire.
But the point is,
any other way to get rich.
I don't pay enough taxes either. Well, I don't do this, and I think everybody should pay more taxes, and your fair share. Look, I'm not a multimillionaire. I have been, but I'm not now, and I pay my fair share every year. You pay your fair share every year. I don't know what the hell they're talking about with your fair share, because there are half the people in this country, 49 to 50%, that pay absolutely nothing.
Well, that's their fair share.
Exactly. But they contribute a lot to votes and everything else. They run our government, but they contribute nothing financially.
I have paid millions in taxes.
I know.
As have you.
Yeah.
I have. What government service have I received?
Well, roads and bridges and runways and stuff like that. I mean, that everybody.
But do I use more of them than anyone else?
No, of course not. No.
I mean, it's.
We're living in a time, Mark, that's so interesting. It's fascinating, where the progressive left has taken up the mantle of Marxist communists. And there's just no question about it. And they're winning people over. They're very good at this because they're using. Let me see if I can get this straight. They're using intellect. They're also using emotion and passion to basically, the autocrats are basically using this to enslave people who vote for them. And people are falling for it all the time. It's sinister. And yet we see it happening everywhere. And, you know, they claim that Donald Trump's a fascist, that they never claim he's a communist. They just claim he's Russian, but they won't claim he's a communist because they're communist and they love it. But they're also fascists. You know, it's so confusing. You and I talked to someone this last week about, you know, the word progressive and Democrat and Republican and how we should talk about our country being a republic and not a democracy. These are little things that you and I harp on all the time. I probably harp on it too much, but they're little things that identify who we are. And they're like eyes, nose, ears, and mouth and hair and how fat or thin you are. It's who you are. And if you can't identify who you are, then how in the hell do you know what you're fighting for if you're fighting at all?
Pete Hegsig, that's who you're talking about, that we were talking with. Mm-hmm. And it was a great conversation with him.
It was.
But Chuck, I'm frustrated. I'm just frustrated that we have a group of people in the Democratic Party. I mean, Nancy Pelosi came out and said the Democratic Party is not about socialism.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Number one, they've been about socialism. Hey, listen, I mentioned to Kristen yesterday, we were on the couch, and I said, tell me about our tax code. What is it called? She said, I don't know, taxes. And I said, no, it has an official name. What is it called?
Progressive.
And she said, I don't know. And I said, it's called a progressive tax code. Guess who started it? Woodrow Wilson, who was the second progressive president, the one on steroids. And it's like people don't understand this stuff, and they need to understand it. They need to know where it came from, what it's all about, and how the Marxist kind of blueprint for the left is what they want to turn this country into. They want to fundamentally transform our country. Where have we heard that before? And I know it sounds like I'm railing and everything else, but I'm really not. This is going on, and people are falling for it, and that's the frustrating thing to me.
I don't understand how you can have a Bernie Sanders on TV who is saying, literally within the same program, 1 minute, millionaires are not paying their fair share. Next, I'm a millionaire and I paid the taxes.
Well, it's
he paid 26%.
It's as ridiculous as Nancy Pelosi saying we're not a socialist party.
Nancy Pelosi did say something truthful this week.
What was that?
I know that you're shocked by that, aren't you?
I just missed it.
She said that a glass of water with a D after it could win in AOC's district.
Oh, yes, I did see that. Yeah. She said it could also win in my district too, which gives you some idea of just how popular she is in San Francisco.
Well, she had to do that to not make it look like she was just firing flaming arrows at AOC.
Well, see, the biggest problem with the Nancy Pelosi has and Chuck Schumer, they've hidden all these years who they really are. And these people like AOC and this woman from Michigan, you know her, Tlaib, is it Tlaib?
Rashid, yeah.
Rashid Tlaib. They're all exposing who they are underneath the cover that they've been using for years and years and years. And these Democrats don't like it. They want to be in the bushes. They want to be sniping from the bushes. They don't want to be in the open field. And these people are putting them in the open field and making them easier targets to hit.
Rashid made a comment this week that I'm going to say is probably truthful. And she said that the Democratic Party is using her and Ilhan Omar as kind of poster children to show how loving they are toward Islam. But she said behind closed doors, we're stuck in a corner and not allowed to speak. You know, that would not surprise me from the Democratic Party because they are all about appearances, not about substance.
I mean, they've made this Omar woman untouchable to where you can't stand up to her. You can't criticize. Listen, folks, she's a public servant. You can criticize anything she does. You hired her. We are affected by the decisions that she makes and the words that come out of her mouth. So all of a sudden you can't criticize her for being anti-Semitic because she is anti-Semitic. She deals with CARE, which should be, if it's not a terrorist organization, should be a terrorist organization. She is fundamental Islam. and they are nothing but politics wrapped in religion. And now, not all Muslims are like that. There are a lot of really great Muslims in this country, but she's not one of them. And neither is Tlaib in Detroit, who deals with Hamas all the time. I mean, I'm sick of these people, strutting around telling us what their moral superiority is and how they want to change America. Screw them, man.
Well, I mean,
just say that.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar, gives speeches talking about the founding fathers. And
what is with Geraldo
how
coming up and saying she doesn't understand the language? I forgive her. And I went, what? She doesn't understand the language? I'm sorry, I just cut you off in the middle of that, and I just remember Geraldo doing that. I mean, I've known Geraldo for a long time, since the '60s. So
Yeah, I don't know what's up with Geraldo.
I don't either.
So
he always defends the indefensible.
Interesting question was just pointed out to me here by Patrick, and that is, Rashid is complaining that the two Muslim women in Congress are told to sit down and not speak.
That's because they're anti-Semitic.
But his point is, aren't they usually told to sit down and not speak within their own faith?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that, though.
So shouldn't that just kind of be normal then?
Well, if you're an imam, I guess they'd listen to you. But if you're not, they don't care. Listen.
All right, so I got to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Hollywood. This is a Hollywood question.
I may or may not have the answer to this.
What is in these people's minds? And let me give you my notes here. We got Jesse Smollett, who just got off with a massive crime.
Yeah.
And now won't even pay for the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
We have Lori Loughlin and her husband, who are pleading not guilty to fixing their kids' education when the evidence is insurmountable. You have Alyssa Milano, who is out claiming that now America is really getting a lesson because 16% fewer people are getting a tax refund this year, who's not understanding, well, because fewer people are getting a tax refund because fewer people are paying taxes. And and you now have Cher, who is saying, how dare this president want to send rapists, murderers, and ISIS members to the streets of my city, Los Angeles?
Judge, the prosecutor has just assailed me with so many questions that I can't possibly answer all of them.
What is in these people's minds? This is insanity.
Well, one at a time. Well, yeah.
One at a time. Jesse Smollett refusing to pay $180,000.
George Soros. Goes back to George Soros and this woman who let him off, this left-wing progressive woman who just, covered everything and said, I'm not going to prosecute. And that's basically it. She said, I'm not going to prosecute. She's done this over and over again. She has thwarted the intentions of the police department, everybody in justice and everybody else in Chicago. Chicago's a mess because of these people that are in there. And she's one of them. Kimberly something or Kim
Fox?
Kim Fox. Yeah. And so, when you have these people installed and they're voted into office, this is what you're going to get. They're progressive, liberal Democrats, and they don't care about the law. They only care about, who knows? Everybody's pissed. Rahm Emanuel, who's only usually not pissed at anybody except Republicans or Trump, he's mad at her. The chief of police is mad at her. Everybody's mad at her. But, it goes on, and it'll just continue to go on because these are just the way Democrats operate. You're a celebrity, you're above the law. Now, as far as schools in Los Angeles, this I know inside and out because I was there and I raised more than one child there. When my wife was pregnant, I had to go to the Presbyterian Church in Beverly Hills down the road from me, just down the street from me, and apply for my child to go into preschool. When she was pregnant, we didn't know it was a boy or a girl yet, and hadn't named it. So I applied. I said, name unknown at this point, and I wrote my check and did anything to get him in this preschool. And they were very selective. So if you were a celebrity or if you were rich, you could get your kids into these schools. And they were all over Los Angeles. The one I was closest to was a little Presbyterian church there in Beverly Hills. So you got them in. It was very expensive, and they started when they were 2 or 3, and then because they went to one of these little preschools, you could matriculate to the private school system, the Curtis schools, the Westlake schools, all of those schools that are private schools, because since the 70s or the middle 60s, you did not want your children, for the safety of your children, forget the education, just their safety, to go to Los Angeles public schools. Nobody wanted any part of it if they could possibly avoid it. So you were locked down to these private schools, these private kindergartens. And so then you go to Curtis School or Westlake or whatever school. I've had, children in all of them.
And we're talking like what, 40 grand a year per kid?
It's like sending them to college. I think it was 25 back then. So it was just terribly expensive, but worth it because your children were safe. St. Paul was one over in Westwood as well, which is a private Catholic school that my daughter went to for a little while. So you did anything. You climbed any mountain to get your kids in there so you could protect them. So now it comes up, and I'm not surprised about this at all, because all of a sudden it comes up, if I used all these advantages I had to get my children this far, why can't I do something else to get them even farther? So I'll use the same system that I used to get them in private schools so that they wouldn't be abused, killed, or maimed or whatever and have a horrible education. I'll get them into colleges the same way. So I understood this instantly, why they did this and what drove them to do it. I don't blame them. It was the history of how they grew up raising their children in Los Angeles. That's in Los Angeles and in the celebrity world. The other thing is, I don't think any of these people are going to go to jail. Everybody says they're going to go. They're going to go for 100 years or 25 years or 2 years. I don't think they're going to go to jail. I mean, they normally never prosecuted these kind of things. Now, maybe they will as an example to somebody, but I'm not sure who. Because if you could get away with it tomorrow, they'd do it again for the sake of their children. They'll do anything. Well,
Felicity Huffman took the plea, and they're claiming she's going to get about 4 months.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, Lori Loughlin rejected the plea deal.
She got 20 years.
And she's facing 40 years.
Oh, 40. Yeah.
40 years.
You ever notice one thing, though, Mark? Have you heard any college that's been implicated in this and anybody that's going to hold a college responsible? No. Anybody, any college.
They're saying right now that, because they want to make examples out of the fame right now.
Oh, colleges are famous. USC is a very famous college. Make an example out of it.
Well, they're saying that she's going to end up with about 40 months with what she's doing.
By the way, I'm not forgiving this. All I'm doing is trying to explain the mindset as to why these people would be caught up into something like this. So the rich do it because they're really, really rich. The celebrities do it because they're celebrities and they're allowed to get away with it.
I'm curious to what's the crime?
Well, the crime is undercutting the system, as if nobody ever does that, but that's what it is. And
people do it all the time.
Well, the other crime is, but my child is from a poor neighborhood and it's a child of color and it should have had her place, but she bought her way in and replaced my child that worked so hard. And I understand that too. So it's privilege. It's celebrity privilege is what it is. Forget white privilege. It's celebrity privilege.
Well, Lori Loughlin is claiming she didn't take the plea because she said, I'm not prepared to do any time right now.
Well, is anyone?
Well, I was wondering, when does one become prepared for doing time?
I mean, this is how Hollywood thinks. So, I know I've done this crime. I'd like to go to jail, and I think I should. But it's not a good time for me. It's not a good time for me.
Right. This is the wrong time for me to do prison time right now. Now, Alyssa Milano, back to the famous accountant, Melissa Milano. She is, what I was saying, she is now complaining that we are really seeing the damage that Trump has done because 16% less people are getting a tax refund. So the first thing is, the reason they're getting fewer tax refunds is because fewer people are paying taxes.
That's right.
The other reason is because the Trump plan changed the tables because the president realized why are people overpaying their taxes and loaning the government money every year and waiting to get it back at the end of the year? So they changed the tables so that people would have more money in their paycheck and less money loaned to the government. Now she's upset that people didn't loan more money to the government and wait a year to get it back.
I mean, where do you start with something like that? Most people are convinced that they didn't even get a tax break, and they did. Most people are waiting for a check the size of the one that they give a Publishers Clearinghouse. If they did that and came to the end of the year and say, okay, this is how much you saved and this is how much you get back. Here's this giant check. Go try to cash it at the bank. I mean, then people would see. But listen, Mark, you and I well know that this Praetorian Guard propaganda press that we have in the media is just so bad that then they want Trump out so badly. They will not be honest and tell the truth as to what's going on. They just won't. They can't. It's beyond them. And so people are totally ignorant, uninformed. Some are stupid. Most are ignorant because it's where they get their news and they believe what they're saying. If you believe what you're saying, only the top 1% got any kind of tax break. That's what they're selling. And that's what Bernie Sanders is trying to sell the other day. I mean, where have we heard this
Bernie
before?
got a tax break. Bernie said
where have we heard this before, Mark? This is the Democrat game plan for what, 50 years? Ever since I can remember growing up, it was tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. The government needs more money. Well, the government needs more money, and we're $22 trillion in debt. It didn't help, did it?
It did not.
Guys, you've got a lot of questions here. People want to ask, want to be a part of the program. By the way, if you do want to be a part of the program, just comment right on here on Twitter, and we'll let people know. First question, kind of tying in with what you guys were talking about. Kelly2755 wants to know, do you think that America is really heading to socialism like the media is trying to say?
Well, I don't know because, Europe is socialist like the media doesn't say. That's why they love Barack Obama so much and hate Trump, because they're socialist and Trump's not, Barack is. Are we heading towards socialism? It's very interesting that the Democrats seem free to be able to talk about socialism like as if it's a platform that they can live with and it's something they can promote. It's interesting that Bernie Sanders is always trying to qualify it. No, I'm not a socialist. I'm a democratic socialist, whatever the crap that means. Socialist
means you're a socialist who's a member of the Democratic Party.
Exactly. It has no special meaning at all. It's just socialism. A lot of people are saying, well, socialism, a gateway drug like marijuana is to heroin and opium and everything else. And socialism is a gateway drug to Marxism, fascism. Hey, folks, I got news for you. They're way beyond that. Way beyond that. So whether people fall for it or not, I don't know. People are asking, basically, when you vote Democratic right now, you are saying, I want an autocrat to enslave me to our government. That's really what you're saying. So if people are going to be misled, then yes, we will go down that road. If they're not and they're informed, no, we will not. So I personally think it's a small group of people who are made to look bigger than they really are by the media. So,
but the Democratic Party is embracing it, though.
Oh, absolutely. But they've embraced it for 100 years, Mark.
But openly embracing it now.
Openly, that's what I said. They're out of the bushes and onto the field. They don't like it either.
What's the next question?
You guys were talking about Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman. Should they go to jail? Ask Chuck Gold.
Well, I'm not the arbiter of justice, that's for sure. And would I send them to jail? I don't know. It depends on how mad people are, because this is now falling into the court of privilege. And the left in Hollywood has always been privileged. Celebrities are privileged. People who are wealthy are privileged. There's no question about that. And so it's an easy target. It's also easy to understand. It just depends. I'm not sure that they should, but
how do you put them in prison when Smollett doesn't?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, today anything can happen.
Isn't the difference, though, Chessie Smollett went after something like racism and Trump, so that was okay. This is going after academia and embarrassing them.
Well, it's not really going after academia. It's going after people who are competing for positions in colleges perhaps on merit. But I mean, we've done this whole thing with what was it called?
Affirmative action.
Yeah, affirmative action, where kids who because they were black or they were brown or they were whatever were allowed into colleges with poorer scores than white kids who had good scores. And then in a year they'd drop out of school, but it made everybody feel better because, well, these kids were not as privileged as the white kids. So, this stuff never works. It just never works.
Mark, one last one really quick. I know you guys have a lot to talk about today. Why do you think no one is being held accountable for spying on Trump, asks BullRed25.
I don't think that is the case. I think people are going to be held accountable.
I do too.
I think AG Barr is going to go after Comey. I think he's going to go after Strzok. I think he's going to go after Brennan. Clapper. I think these people have a limited window of freedom in front of them right now.
I do too. If all things are right, it will happen because it needs to happen. Not as revenge, but as justice. It just needs to happen.
So I'm going to jump back to Cher for a minute, Chuck. So Cher said...
Cher all of a sudden became a Republican.
I know. She said, I understand helping struggling immigrants, but my city, L.A., isn't taking care of its own. Mm-hmm. What about the 50,000 plus American citizens who live on the streets? People who live below the poverty line and are hungry. If my state can't take care of its own, including veterans, how can it take care of more?
I love the way she threw veterans in there just to, to qualify everything. I'm for veterans.
And which President Trump said, I finally agree with Cher.
Right. Yeah.
Now, did you hear Cher's response?
No.
She said, President Trump is a lizard brain.
A lizard brain?
Yes.
No. That's interesting. A lizard brain. I haven't heard that one before. You know what? It's just... I was telling Kristen last night, it's very interesting that when people get celebrity followed by money, they think they know the answer to everything. And all of a sudden they're the ones to listen to me talking because I have celebrity with a little money. But I believe that's true. And we are not the arbiters of truth just because we're celebrities. It's just amazing to me how much power and weight people give Hollywood. And I mean, this woman, I like Cher. I think I really loved Cher in Moonstruck. That just was a great movie. I liked her in it. And I think she's a really great performer and all that kind of stuff. She's totally narcissistic, but most people in Hollywood are. But the point is that she left home when she was like 15 and ran away with Sonny Bono. Now, that doesn't mean you can't learn anything, but she's not that smart. She's not that bright. I think she's if you listen to her mother, you realize her mother's kind of very genteel, kind of a pretty woman. So she was obviously raised by someone who had brains. And then all of a sudden you get caught up in everything that Hollywood thinks. And you think that's what I'm going to. So you start parroting with passion and enthusiasm everything that Hollywood says. And people will stand on the corner and applaud you. Great job. That's beautiful. You are so smart. And you're not.
Well, she also said that why would the president, and Cory Booker jumped in on this thing too, the president is just using humans as a way of getting revenge. And Cher said, why would the president send murderers, rapists, and ISIS members to the streets of Los Angeles? Now, my understanding is that these are hardworking people that are crossing the border just looking for a better life.
And they're better than Americans, too, because they don't commit nearly the crimes that Americans do.
They are better people than us. And according to many of the leaders of the sanctuary cities are safer.
Safer, absolutely. Much safer.
So why is Cher so concerned about these murderers, rapists, and ISIS members?
Because she's an idiot.
But they would do nothing. But they would do nothing but make Los Angeles a better place.
Yeah, they don't believe that. You deal every day with the hypocrisy of the left, constantly pointing the finger at you, saying this is who you are, when in fact it's who they are. The transference and the posturing and the ridiculousness of the left is just insane, and she's caught up in that as well. So it makes her look like an idiot. She's probably not an idiot, but it makes her look like one.
I think she's an idiot, but I'll go along with
that.
it.
I've never met her. I don't know. I met Sonny. I knew him. I didn't know him. I met him. We talked, and he seemed like a nice fellow. But
he was a Republican.
Oh, I forgot that. That's right. You're right. Mm-hmm.
So
I was not
audience,
so Republican at the time we met.
I want to ask our audience a question. So you guys,
Still not.
when I ask you this question, I want you to type in the Twitter that yes, you would, or no, you would not. Okay, here's the question. The president has proposed shipping the illegal aliens to the sanctuary cities. They are pushing back, saying that is illegal. The president doesn't have the authority.
Of course it's not illegal. That's not true.
But I have a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
What if we here at Blunt Force Truth started a fund? If we started a GoFundMe
mm-hmm.
where people could send money to a GoFundMe account, and you and I and our team here at Blunt Force Truth will rent buses, and we will put people on buses, and we will drive them to San Francisco. We will put buses at the border.
You know who beat you to this?
Hold up a big sign that says "Free Ride to San Francisco."
You know who beat you to this?
No, who beat
me? A writer for the Johnny Carson show. A writer for the Johnny Carson show came through, not with a GoFundMe thing, but a gold, silver, and platinum way to get these people to where they need to go. A gold, the silver one was coach. The gold one was a little higher class, whatever, the business class, and the platinum was first class. And so you could send in money and tickets, not like a GoFundMe, but different, more like a telethon. And Mark, this is so insane. I had a proposal. I think I told it on the show that I think they should all go to Hawaii. All of them. Just send them all to Hawaii. They're a long way from home. They have a hard time getting their money out of there to send back to Mexico. Hawaiians are, all lefty Democrats, so let them live over there in luxury on the island. And when it comes time for their court date, it won't be hard to find them unless they're really, really good swimmers.
Okay, now, Chuck, I want to tell you, I'm watching Twitter right now, and we are getting, Rusty, you're seeing this?
Yeah, it's going crazy. I haven't seen any no's yet. We're at about 50 and climbing yeses, including Victoria, who says, hell, my car seat's 7. I'll drive.
So we are getting inundated with people right now, Chuck, that are saying they would throw money in to the Blunt Force Truth free bus ride.
Greyhound Trailways project. Or whatever. Trailways still in business?
Yes. Well, you know what? We could rent private buses. We could just,
That's so democratic.
Some of them have Wi-Fi on them now, too. That could be nice.
Oh, well, they can talk to their folks back home.
And I think we take them, what do you think? I think we take them to San Francisco.
Well, that's fine. I mean, you can take them anywhere you want in these, Trump came out with this idea for sanctuary cities, which he's so brilliant because he exposes the left. And so they immediately have to stand up and defend themselves and make themselves look like the idiots they are and, the hypocrisy that they live in. And that's basically what he's doing. I mean, talk about the art of the deal. Just propose something that makes really good sense that literally falls into their laps and they will go insane, including Cher. She was going to take some into her house at one time, but she decided not to do that.
Yeah,
they always talk like this. Always, I'm leaving America if Trump is elected.
Cher was going to go to the planet Pluto, if you remember.
Please.
She did say that.
Yeah, well.
Hey, Mark, we got our first no here. It's from America's Shrug 1. It says, sorry, I can't do that. My money's going to the wall.
All right. That's a good,
that's forgivable. Yeah.
All right. We'll go along with that. But, Chuck, I think that if we started this fund, we could actually raise money. We would use 100% of the money for bus fare. And we will ship these people right to San Francisco. And then there's no argument that it's not legal.
Well, where do these, everybody says that it's illegal to send them to these sanctuary cities. Well, what is legal? I mean, where are they supposed to go? Are they all supposed to hang out on the border?
They're saying
that they're supposed to stay in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona.
Once they get over, apparently once they cross the line, they're on their own. That the feds don't have the right to tell you where in the country you're going to go.
Well, Obama did it.
Well,
he changed the demographics of entire towns and cities.
Well, that's how Ilhan Omar got elected, because he shipped all the Somalis to one congressional district in Minnesota.
Thank you very much.
But they're saying the president can't do it. So I'm
that's
saying
a lie. I think the president can do anything he wants to when it comes to immigration, pretty much.
I'm saying if it's shown that the president can't do this, then you and I are going to start a fund and we're going to bus them to the sanctuary cities.
Okay. All right. As long as I don't have to go.
I don't, we will go, Rusty and I will go down there and hold the sign up. Free bus rides to San Francisco. Wi-Fi included. Luxury bus, Wi-Fi included.
Would you throw in Ghirardelli chocolates? That'll get them on the bus.
We'll throw in some chocolate, and we'll get a couple of cases of Dos Equis.
I'm wondering.
Put that on the bus. Oh, wait a minute. That was probably racist if I said that.
As a practical thing, I'm wondering, these thousands of people that come over the border, put yourself in their shoes for a minute. So they're across the border. They have a court date. They have to go somewhere. Some of them have children with them. Some of them just, brought children along because it helps them get in the country easier, whatever it is. What are they thinking about? They're in a country, they don't speak the language. Our country's vast. It's huge. Texas alone is huge. So they're across the border. They're thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? What's my plan now? Where do I go and what do I do? How do I make any money? How do I get... so they have just countless number of lawyers and things who are telling them, this is how you game the system. This is how you get on our welfare. This is how you take care of your kids in the hospital. This is how you take care of yourself. So they just have all these options. Someone is directing them somehow, because you just don't show up in a foreign country and go, I got this.
The first thing I want them to see is Rusty and I wearing a couple of red sombreros, holding up a sign that says free bus fare to San Francisco. That's the first thing I want them to see. So I have video footage of Rusty in a sombrero. So this is not the first time for this.
Yes. By the way, somebody asked a question, and this one makes me uncomfortable, but I'd like to get your take on it. Kelly,
so you're going to make us uncomfortable.
Well, yeah. Serious question. Why can't we have camps like we did for the Japanese in World War II?
Because we aren't FDR. We're not Democrats. We don't do that to people.
Only the Democrats take people hostage and put them in camps.
Seriously. But it was worse. FDR took their businesses, took their homes, took everything they owned and slapped them in the middle of the country someplace so that they couldn't, through binoculars, look out across and give away all our, and most of them were Americans. They weren't even Japanese. They just happened to be Japanese Americans.
Chuck, I got a few more items here to burn through. So let's do a little rapid fire.
Well, you better hurry. We're almost done. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to rapid fire. AOC has given up Facebook. She says that social media presents a public health risk, and it is leading to increased isolation, depression, anxiety, addiction, and escapism.
I predict AOC will be out of a job within a year and a half.
I'd probably go along with that. Laguna police in California are now in trouble because they came up with a new graphics.
I know, it's got a flag of
America,
American flag on the side of the cars, and everybody went crazy. Laguna is very near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time down there. A couple of my kids lived there for a while. This is just bizarre. I mean, the American flag, remember back in the 60s and 70s, America, love it or leave it. That was the whole thing. We're back to that now. And the flag is kind of like where everybody's going with this. Burn the flag and step on the flag and throw the flag. And the flag upsets me. And for one reason or another, let me ask you something. If you live in America and the American flag represents our country and who we are, what other flag would you like to see represent us? Because I don't know of one.
Well, apparently there are people living in Laguna that they're saying are immigrants who the American flag is offensive.
So, would they want a Mexican flag on a
go back to Mexico where they have Mexican flags?
I mean, this makes no sense to me. But go ahead.
New York is now trying to pass a law. They're going to pass a law that makes it illegal. Now, I want you to follow with me here.
Illegal.
It is illegal for private businesses to drug test employees for marijuana. Right. Now, but the government can drug test for their employees. So the government, if you take a government job, we can give you a drug test, see if you're using marijuana. But if you're a private business, we cannot drug test you to see if you're using marijuana.
Back to my point where government is always at odds with private sector. The private sector always wins because they're smarter. Government's stupid. And we know that by everything the government does. It fails almost at everything, or spends so much money to get around their mistakes that they finally get something to work. But I'll give you an example. Standard Oil, 100 years ago, went to court and they were going to break it up. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
100 years ago. Guess when they finished? When they finally finished breaking it up. You know when they finished?
What year?
Last week.
Last week.
Finally got it done last week. This is what Exxon came out of and all this, the Rockefeller, blah, blah, blah.
But Elizabeth
100
Warren.
years.
And Elizabeth Warren is going to break up Amazon, Google, and Facebook.
Yeah, I know.
And they couldn't even break up an oil company. Imagine trying to break up Amazon.
It took them 100 years. I remember a Rockefeller sitting there thanking them when they were doing it. He said, thanks. You made me a lot wealthier than I really was.
So a man at the Mall of America threw a small child 30 feet off a balcony.
Who could do that? I mean, a small child, the child was like 4 or 5 years old.
He is now saying the reason he did it is because he was there at the mall to pick up women, and he was angry because he was being rejected by women at the mall, and therefore decided he needed to kill someone, and found the small boy, so decided he would throw him 30 feet off a balcony.
So what do you think should happen to this guy? I think somebody should heave him off a balcony about, 60 feet and see how he does. Oh, but that's so cruel, Chuck. Yeah, well, that's just who would do something like that to a child, a defenseless little boy who happened to be a white boy. And this guy was he, Pakistani or what was it?
Yes. So I have a question. This is the district of Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, all right. Have you heard her say anything about this?
She is completely silent about this.
Yeah. That's because she's a fundamental Islamist. That's why.
She is completely silent. Well, this is how they deal with gays.
Mm-hmm.
Not that this young boy was gay. I mean, he's 4 years old, but apparently throwing people off of from heights is not.
Yeah, this is not a tragedy. This is a crime.
No, this guy should never see freaking daylight again.
No, he should be, taken to a 60-foot drop off in the middle of a mall, take him up 3 more stories and say, well, let's see if you can fly.
One last item.
I'm sure a lot of people will say, Chuck, you have no heart. You would do that to someone. This is metaphorically speaking, folks. I mean, it just stands to reason that. And on top of that, it's very Islamic.
No, I would do the 60-foot drop using a trebuchet.
Using what?
Using a trebuchet.
A trebuchet? What kind of medieval piece of crap is that?
So I would launch him into space.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So here's the thing here's the last one I want to go over here before we wrap up here. And this is Democratic-led Dying and Terminally Act. So this is a new law in New Jersey that is now saying that if a psychiatrist and a psychologist claim that you are in sound mind, and if 2 doctors claim that you have less than 6 months to live, you can now ask the doctors to kill you. Mm-hmm. Here's my concern with this. My concern with this is I think anybody that wants to end their own life has the right to do it. You should own your own body. I think when you start saying that medical professionals are the deciding factor, that you're handing life and death essentially over to the government. And here's my concern. If the psychologist is saying, yeah, he's in sound mind, when does this shift to the psychiatrist or the psychologist talking you into it? When does this shift to, well, he's in a coma, but his family's decided it's best that he should be dead? When does this move to, well, the government's decided that it's not worth the investment to keep you alive since you're only going to be alive for 6 months and we're on a single payer system and this is causing too much burden to the system? It's a slippery slope argument.
I remember I had a dog named Sarge, big shepherd that I loved. And he was dying, and I knew he was. And my vet said, you need to bring him in. I need to put him down, Chuck. And I said, oh, man. This was in Beverly Hills when I lived there. I remember I drove him in. He said, you want to go out of the room? I said, no. I slept with him in my bed last night. And, I'm ready, and I know he's ready. And so he slipped this needle into him, and Sarge never moved. He just kind of laid there, and his eyes kind of blinked for a minute. And the vet looked at me, and he said, well, he's gone. And I said, are you kidding me? He said, no. He said, he's gone. And I said, man, I'll tell you what, that's how I'd like to go out. And I remember through the tears, I cried over that dog. I loved him. And through the tears, I went home and thought, how remarkable that you could actually do this and you wouldn't feel anything. Because we always look at death as a painful experience. It's one of the things that nobody really wants to look at and look forward to, or because it's not something to look forward to.
No, it's not.
And so when you think of it in a painless way, it's far more acceptable than dying in a fiery crash or whatever other circumstances, or from cancer or for whatever. So in a painful way. So I'm not sure that has anything to do with your question. My problem is that government just needs to stay out of our lives. They shouldn't be doing any of this stuff. And it's up to you as to what you want to do with your life and when you want to do it. I mean, it's like abortion. I'm not for abortion, but I'm not a woman, and I'm not pregnant. I never will be. But if a woman wants to have an abortion, that's between her and God and her family and everything else. It's not between her and the government. And I don't want to pay for it through Planned Parenthood or anything else, and I don't think we should be. So the argument is not whether you have a right to do it or not. You certainly have a right to abort if you want to, if that's your decision. But you don't have a right to ask me to pay for it and condone it. So don't. That's the only rub I have with that, other than when I say I have my feelings about it, spiritual and otherwise. But those are my feelings. I'm not going to push them off on you. Just don't make me pay for what you want to do.
Chuck, I want to let everybody know as we wrap up here to, don't forget you can now get Blunt Force Truth on the Podcast One app, or you can get us at iTunes. Don't forget to go to bluntforcetruth.com for all your news, and you can get great shirts and cups and hats. And
shirts.
We have a new advertiser that'll be starting with us next week. Blue Emu will be joining us.
They're going to be on board. Good. Now that must be me.
That is you, Blue Emu, for all of your aches and pain issues. So take us out.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Blunt Force Truth. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay in touch. And Mark, I'll see you in a few minutes. We're going to do another one. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yes, we are.